The following is a presentation of KSL Sports. First and 12. A total roundup of BYU and Utah football and the expanded Big 12 Conference. Subscribe to the First and 12 podcast. Your hosts are Mitch Harper and Alex Kirry on KSL News Radio.
First and 12 rolls on. Hope all of you are having a fantastic Tuesday night. Mitch Harper and Alex Kirry with you. Coming from Broadcast House in Salt Lake City. It's time to look ahead in Big 12 football. Week 10, can you believe it, folks? November football is on the horizon this weekend. Let's break it down.
The week ahead. Matchups that have us the most excited about the week to come in the Big 12.
All right, first up here, Mitch, I'm telling you, the games just keep getting more interesting here, and I'm trying to look and see teams with buys right off the bat, though. BYU and TCU, who happen to BYU's going to go to Texas Tech the week after their bye, and then they host TCU. And so it's those are going to be, you're going to see fewer buys as we get along here toward the end of the season. And right off the bat, let's go with some of these early games here. West Virginia going to Houston. Man, Houston's going to be 8-1 at the end of this week, I would assume. But, that's a big one. You got to play the game at 10 a.m. this week and figure it out. And that's a large one that's looming for Houston. But I think people look and they go, well, we want to see Houston playing a team that might give them a little bit of a run for their money. UCF goes to Baylor. That one's going to also be an early one on ESPNU. I don't know what to think about either of these teams, Mitch. I'm not sure who is even favored in a game like that because Baylor's been playing so poorly and UCF has just been meh, and they were off last week, and so you kind of forgot about them even after a week.
Yeah, this is going to be a really interesting spot for both teams to really tell us where the direction of their seasons are going to really ultimately end up this year. And I think for UCF, they feel pretty good about where things are at with Scott Frost in year one. Baylor, I think they're just trying to, stack up some wins and be a little more respectable in the Big 12 standings. But what's always interesting about November football, Alex, is that it feels like teams that are maybe thinking ahead to the portal, thinking ahead to coaching carousel, they can be distracted and be checked out in some games, and that could have a factor into some outcomes of ball games where I feel a little more confident. UCF could be a little more locked in, but we'll see what ends up happening there. Arizona State goes at Iowa State, 10 a.m. Mountain Time on TNT. Interesting spot where both teams badly need a win.
Somebody's going to be 5-4 after this one,
That's
Mitch.
what's crazy. The best 5-3 football teams maybe you're going to find in college football. That's a high-level matchup that feels top 25 quality, but it's two 5-3 teams and speaks again to the depth in this conference.
Yeah, and that the conference, the scheduling is funny because we say at the beginning of the year, this is going to be a tough schedule. We have no idea. This game right here has become a wild one because on the schedule, I think early in the season we thought, wait till those two teams are undefeated and they meet up against one another on November 1st, the very end of the weekend, and no such thing. There's not a small number next to either one of them, which is a wild thing, just like you were saying. It feels like a top 25 matchup. Certainly the talent's there for these two teams, but they met in the Big 12 championship game last year, and now things have changed dramatically. Let's get to some of these teams who have rankings going on. How about Texas Tech, who's goes to Kansas State? This is a sneaky, scary game. Mitch, is there a way that Kansas State totally revitalizes their entire season when they host Texas Tech this weekend there in Manhattan? Look, I will say Avery Johnson is uber talented, and every game he's been in, I don't care what has happened with his team, he's played usually pretty darn well in these games, and he is still a really, really tough target to take down.
Kansas State's defense is showing up, and I think that's what's been impressive. The team that we saw all the way back in week 0 where we, even despite the loss, felt like, okay, they're going to be that tough physical football team on the defensive side that didn't show up at all in September. That's starting to appear in games. You saw that last week. That's going to give Kansas State the chance. They got to be a far more physical football team than Texas Tech. Texas Tech's got the best defense in the Big 12, but I think the questions at quarterback, how healthy is Baron Morton? They lose Will Hammond. You can entertain an idea where K-State wins this game. I think if you're in the Big 12 offices, you're like, please, somebody just do not pull off this upset. We need 2 bids in the college football playoff and level up that drama meter in the conference. But I think you can. It would not shock me in the slightest if Kansas State somehow pulled off that upset. What would shock me is if Oklahoma State got a win. Even at Kansas, Oklahoma State goes to Lawrence, 2 p.m. on ESPN+. Kansas State, this feels like a great get-right spot, but at the same time, they kind of lost their season a bit last week in their rivalry game. So I'm curious to see how they respond, but I would expect that Kansas should roll, but you just never know. Maybe Oklahoma State and Meekum, who stayed the course and said all the right things of, hey, we're going to stay focused. We still like there's good football ahead. Let's see it, buddy, because time's ticking.
Yeah, I mean, look, that looks like a dog of a game, but underneath it all, you got a team who's got a fired coach who they're facing off against, and you got a coach who's basically trying to avoid getting fired, right? I mean, at this point,
Lance Leipold, it's interesting on him because
they love him. They love him there, and he's not delivered at all.
I think that's turning, though. It feels like it's kind of turning. And look, sometimes you get on social media and feel like it's an echo chamber, but. Again, they felt like 2 years ago they were knocking on the door of winning the Big 12. You're nowhere close. Yeah. You've been passed up by BYU's. You've been passed up by Arizona State's. And you've been a mainstay in this conference now
beat your in-state
since
rival.
the beginning. Nothing's changed really other than where you got one bowl win a couple years ago, and that was a huge deal for Kansas. But you haven't leveled up with what would appear to have been a franchise quarterback for Kansas. And what's next? Like, it kind of leads you to wonder. Daniels is gone after this year. Does Wisconsin pull the plug on Luke Fickell with Lance Leipold's connections to Wisconsin? It would seem like it would make a lot of sense, but it's going to be really interesting to see what's next for Leipold. But to your point, they have loved him. I mean, Washington came calling, and then Leipold got a huge contract extension. So it'll be fascinating to see kind of what's next for the Jayhawks. Arizona at Colorado, 2 teams badly needing a win, 5 p.m. on FS1. I would imagine that Boulder still shows up, but this could be a game where maybe it's the least energized Coach Prime crowd. I think it's noteworthy that it's on FS1. Is the nation kind of done with the Coach Prime story? Because they were a network TV darling.
Right, yeah, I get it. Arizona is not exactly a sexy sell on a game either. But, man, I'm telling you, Arizona right now, they got to have this. They smell blood in the water with Colorado. They're like, hey, we could actually steal this one away too. So I think they're going to go in there with some confidence because they've lost 2 games in a row when they were leading both of those very good opponents. And I think that, you come off of tough losses like that, it's always a tough deal. And then finally, Cincinnati going to Utah. This, of course, is the big game because ESPN College Game Day is going to be there. Cincinnati comes in highly touted and people going, all right, this is the darling of the season so far for the Big 12, the brand newcomer, because Cincinnati last year, nowhere to be seen at the tops of the conference tables, but they go to Utah. Utah is now back to a spot, I think, from an attitude perspective, they feel phenomenal. Let's see if they can get it done at home. It's going to be very difficult for Cincinnati to win at Utah at Rice-Eccles Stadium at night in the dark. I think we know how good Kyle Whittingham gets his guys dialed up. Let's take another break. Final one, because we're going to get to our predictions next, so don't miss any of it. Stay right here with us. First and 12, KSL News Radio, 102.7 FM and 1160 AM.